Uh, Welcome everyone to July's Access to Text. Today we'll be going through quite a few topics, UC Xpress being one of those, but welcome to you all and glad to have you. In a minute, my click as well. Just starting not to work, there we go. So what are we discussing today? First off, we're going to go through a Fastport deep dive. So Mitch will run through how Fastport works, and getting an understanding of why you would use Fastport and what and how Fastport works and what we do when you forward the number to the 1-800 number and how that works, so you can understand why it's a good idea to attempt to do it to be able to remove the porting delay. Tech user verification. So I'll be going through this. So we have some legislative requirements as a carrier. We need to be able to verify users from a TAC and porting perspective. So I'll quickly rehash what I went through last month, but also talk about some of the reasons as to why. Ann will go through the UC Xpress roadmap. So we have Ann, our head of product, joining us to talk about that. We also have some UC Xpress scenarios that Mitch will go through. And then we have a quick chat about the launch events that are happening for UC Xpress next week. So we'll jump straight into Fastport Deep Dive with Mitch.
Awesome. Thanks for that, John. So just a little bit about what Fastport is, first of all. So Fastport's a way for you to be able to bring in your customer onto the Access 4 platform a bit faster than normal. So you don't have to wait for porting to happen. So that 4 to 6 week lead time that you have for a Cat C port, even 2 weeks for a Cat A kind of thing, it means you can move them across a lot faster. How it actually works is you put a diversion in from the carrier side. You can also put it in from the PBX. However, we do have to have a few requirements around what is being handed across from a header's perspective and what information we can get from that. And you put in a forward to a 1-800 number to our side. So the benefits of this is it means that you can control when the customer is moving across. If you have access to the losing platform, so that could be something like another Broadworks system, could be a on-prem PBX, and you're putting in forward, place that forward, or on the SIP trunks and going onto that on-prem PBX as well. If you can control that, it means that when you put in place that forward to that number on our side, that's when the customer cuts across. So there's no delays. You can control exactly when that happens. It means that if you need to do it outside of our outside business hours or anything like that, or if your customer has downtime and you need it to occur because they're moving office or something along those lines, gives you that control, so you can control exactly when it cuts across. If you don't have that level of control across their system and you do have to raise it with the losing carrier, whether that's Optus or Telstra or anything like that, they can still do it for you. You just got to ask them, put on an exchange-based diversion, and that just gets, once again, to that 1-800 number on our side. From there, with those losing carriers, they may take a little bit more time to do it. I know Telstra has about a 4 or 5 day SLA to comply with these changes, so it can take a little bit more time, but it still gives you a bit of control around when. So if they're having downtime or something along those lines, you can call up, say it's an emergency, put in place that forward, and get moving across. So it gives you a lot more control from that perspective, moves them across to our side. What that's actually doing on our side, if you want to move to the next slide, John. So what we're actually doing on our side from that perspective is we're routing those calls to the end user service. So you put in a porting request with us. When you do so, you say that you're putting in place, you do plan on putting in place Fastport or an EBD. We then add the numbers into that enterprise like normal. However, we do it earlier in the step. So normally there's a 3 day lead time between when you put in a port and when we put the numbers in there. This will usually happen the next business day. So a lot faster that way. You provision their call flow, whether it's just a single user to answer some calls if it's emergency, or if it's full call flow, IVRs, call queues, whatever you need it to be. So you provision it like it needs to be. Real numbers put in place there. And then when you put in place that forward, it's actually, we're looking at the headers and looking at where it's meant to route to. So we're detecting the number that was originally dialed. We see that in our system and we direct it to that end user. So from the end user's perspective, they're receiving that call as if came directly to them. They don't see that forward. They're not seeing any diversion headers or anything like that. It looks like the call just came in. They're still seeing the original calling ID. So it's really useful from that perspective. They're not noticing any difference. When they call out, the numbers are still not on our system, of course, but we will be masking their outbound calling line ID. So we're going to make it seem like they're calling from our system using their real numbers. So much the same in that case as well. So from an outbound perspective, it means they're still calling out as their real numbers. You can do this on just a single number if you like. So if it's a primary number inside a real organization, that's what everyone calls. Great, you can just put in that place that number. Or if you want to put in place all of their numbers, so they have a 100 number range, every user has their own DID inside the platform, anything like that, you can put in place that forward on all of those users, and it means that every single user is going to be calling out as their real number. Redirections are happening for all of those numbers. Something to be aware of, some carriers will charge you, depending on how you put in place that redirection, around how many numbers could be how they charge. So some carriers will charge you how many calls are being redirected. Some will charge you for how many numbers are being redirected. So if it's a 100 number range, could be quite costly from that perspective. So it does give you that control around when they're coming across, giving the customer the ability to move to our system a lot faster. They're not seeing any different. So they're, as I mentioned, their numbers coming in, they're calling out as a real number. It seems like they've gone live with you from that perspective. We're on the Access Vault platform. So much simpler from that perspective. And then what happens is that port, which is still in that pending status, you let us know that the EBD has been put in place, the redirection is working, customer's gone live inside our system, and then our porting team continues their process on the back end. So that port, which could be 4 or 6 weeks down the track, that's still going to occur like normal. There will still be that slight downtime when the port occurs, like you do expect with any port. However, you don't have to worry about making sure the call routing is correct or anything like that. Where once that port occurs, that EBD is taken off. That's just an automatic process from that perspective. And then it's calling into our platform. You don't have to worry about changing numbers or anything like that. So much simpler from that perspective as well. So it's almost like the customer went live 4 or 6 weeks before the port occurred in that aspect of things. I want to jump to the next slide there, John. So as I mentioned, around the bit of the process, so when activating it, you submit the port like normal. So you put in the port with our system. You do need to make sure that you select the exchange space diversion and the import numbers options inside the porting process. That way our porting team know that you are putting in place that EBD, and we adding the numbers into your inventory straight away as well. Once you will get a notification from us, usually could be same business day, could be the next business day, saying the numbers have been added. And then you're good to configure all the services. So that's when you configure all the users, IVRs, ungroups, call queues, whatever it needs to be. It does still work with things like faxing and things like that as well, still applicable. So those still work from that perspective as well. Once that's done, you reach out to the losing carrier, you provide them details saying you want to put in place an EBD, make sure that you provide them all the numbers that need to be redirected, and you give them either the 1-800 number. If they support a 1-800 number, most carriers will. Nice thing about the 1-800 number is reverse charge. So we're taking that cost from that perspective, much easier. If they don't support the 1-800 number, we do have local numbers for each state as well, which you can redirect to, so keeping that cost down from that perspective as well. Once that's in, if you call the number, you will get, if first call's in there, we'll receive a notification just saying, yes, if you've called from this number, exchange-based diversion is going to work, and then it will forward you to the correct location. So you will be notified saying EBD is working. If you call the number and you receive anything else, call into our TAC team or call into our support team and we can help troubleshoot what's going on. So there may be redirection headers are not coming through. We can see those from that side, or something else could be happening on the back end. Users not configured correctly, something like that. Our TAC team will be able to support you for that one. Once that's in place, all additional calls after that, after the first few, will not receive that message either. So it's just the first few that get that message, just letting you know that the forward's in place. And then you let our porting team know that, yep, everything's ready, services are activated, and they will continue with that porting process from there. You do that just from the porting case inside SaaSPlus. There's just an option in there saying EBD activated, and then our porting team will continue with that process. If it's been a few days and we haven't received anything, our porting team will reach out to you to see if there's any assistance you require from that perspective as well. So it is a quite easy process to get that up and running. It means that you don't have to worry about temporary numbers, removing them from the users, anything like that from that perspective as well. So it's a much easier, faster way of getting the customer cut across when needed from that perspective. Awesome. Back to you, John, with the user verification.
Awesome. So just one other thing on top of what Mitch said there, it is really good for being able to projectize a project that you're bringing on board, because it means you can actually select the date when you want to do the migration. So you can select when you get the EPD on and then have that convert through and convert the client across, as opposed to waiting for porting dates, which can be problematic at times because you get rejections, things like that. But you can actually cut them over well before you're going to get the porting through. So we find that very useful for those type of things. So on to user verification process. So it's all about respecting your privacy and your customers' privacy. It is a legislative requirement for us to be able to do this. So we need to make sure that we verify the person that's calling us and that they're able to log a tax case or put in a porting order or do a billing transaction, to make sure that, you know, the privacy of yourself or your customer is upheld. Because if they made a change to a system or a service or a billing requirement or something like that, then, you know, and we did that without user verification, it would mean that you would, you know, be questioning us as to why we allowed that to happen. So this is to protect you, protect us, and protect your customers as well. So the verification process. Now, I went through this last month, and for those of you that weren't here last month, how this will work is within SaaSPOS, there is an area under your name that says user verification, and what it will ask you, what it will show you is the login ID, your reseller name, but probably the most important part is your one-time password down the bottom there. So when you call up the TAC will ask you will ask you for your user ID, and then they'll enter your user ID in here to get the one-time password. Then they will ask the user that is calling what the one-time password is through the Manage My Profile point of view under the User Verification tab, and confirm that with you. And once they've confirmed that, you will be right to work with them from a phone call point of view. So it's really important to be in front of SaaSPOS from that perspective when you want to be able to do that. But we do have another process which is around SMS. So we do have the capability of sending you an SMS, but it will be the SMS that is aligned to your account, which gets the SMS codes to do two-factor authentication within SaaSPOS. So pretty much the same process. TAC will ask you for a user ID. So what I'm showing you here is also the back-end side, so what TAC sees of information to be able to enter the SMS code. So TAC will ask you for your user ID, then they'll go to user verification tab, they'll manage your profile, then they'll initiate the SMS. You'll get an SMS on your phone, and then they'll put the SMS code in here and verify the SMS code against what you've given them. And if that says verified, then you'll be allowed to continue talking to the TAC, and away you go. So just a quick FAQ on why we're doing this and where it will be used. So it will be used when requesting changes through TAC or porting, and I also believe billing. When will it be requested? Every time you call up. So it'll be every time you call up to confirm that you are who you are. And of course, the reasons are because of the legislation. And when will it start? The 24th of July this month. So that's in next week, basically. So that will start from next week, and you will need to, when you call in, be able to either log into SaaSPOS, get your ID, or have your mobile phone with you that is registered with SaaSPOS to be able to accept that SMS code. All right, over to you, Ann.
Just quickly before you move on, John, as well, if you just want to go back 2 slides to the verification process.
Yes, ma'am.
You will notice there on the right-hand side, so there's not just, our TAC team won't just ask you for your user ID and the SMS or the one-time code. There is also a few other steps you do need to cross off as there as well, either being your role, your contact email address, your username, or your mobile number. So mobile number being easy if you're doing SMS verification, but you will need to verify at least 2 of those when you are speaking to TAC as well. So it's not just your initial user ID or your username and that one-time code. You will need to verify a few other steps there as well. Just so you're aware, there is a few more steps that need to be required. Out of those 4, you do only need to be verified for 2 of them. So if you verify the first 2, perfect, that's all we need. If you do fail the first 2, there will be some more. But if you fail 3 of those 5, or 3 of those 4 rather, we will need to reach out and find a different way of being able to contact before you reach out to our TAC team, because we won't be able to verify your identity from that perspective as well.
Cool.
And just before we continue as well, if anyone does have any questions around any of what we've been through or what we're coming up, please throw them in the chat, in the Q&A section at the bottom of the window as well. We will be going through those at the end.
Over to you, Ann.
Cool, thank you. Thank you, John and Mitch, for having me. It's a very exciting reason why I'm here today is because we've launched UC Xpress. I'm so excited because it's been such a long time in terms from internally for us to build this product. Yeah, no, it's really, really exciting. It's been a huge amount of work for us to get this product up. It's one of the biggest products we've ever launched, pretty much after Broadworks and SaaSposs. And it's really, really exciting that we can offer this product because it gives you that flexibility. Now, when we previously had a per seat model, we can now have a per simultaneous call offering, and that allows you to reach so many different customers. And we're really excited what that can do for our partners and what it can do to grow your businesses. So I've talked about this a lot of roadshows and previous access to text, but UC Xpress is a per simultaneous call product, which is great for customers that have low call volumes or high numbers of devices. So to visualize like the extreme of that would be like a hotel where every 100 of rooms, every room has a phone because of compliance and when it needs to be used, but it's really, really low usage. Pretty much only reception actually gets calls. So on Broadworks, you would have to have a license for every single one of those devices to have, and the channels are available, but they're not really being utilized. Whereas per simultaneous call, you have as many devices as you like, but and then you pay for those simultaneous calls and external calls that you need to have. So if you know that pretty much rooms may use 4 at any one time, but receptions using 16, you get 20 simultaneous calls, and let's say 10 of those are going to go external calls, you get 10 external step channels. So in those sorts of scenarios, it works out much cheaper to go UC Xpress per simultaneous call than it would be per seat. So it's not just hotels, schools are a great example, nursing homes are another great example, but just any place that has either really low call volumes or high numbers of devices that aren't being utilized, they're really, really good for this sort of product. So we launched on the 5th of July, and we've had an amazing first week of the launch. So 75 partners up and ready to use UC Xpress, and we had live customers in the very first day of launch. It was a very exciting moment in the office when the first live customer came on. We all did a bit of a happy dance. So it was very good to see the product being used, but also validating that a customer was turned on, everything worked the way it expected to. And so that's really, really exciting from our team perspective. But we're certainly not done. There is a heap to go in the roadmap. We got UC Xpress out in terms of MVP, which is that minimal viable product to get over the line and start being used. But there's a number of things that we want to bring on, and they're prioritizing this roadmap here. So this is actually publicly available. And I think Jasmine will be sending out the links for this after this one, but these links are available and you can see what our product team is prioritizing on the roadmap. So for example, we have suspend and unsuspend coming up first and a Nava add-on, and it goes down the list, and there's quite a number of things. We have a lot we want to do, and you can see the priority as they're coming out. And we also have another list that shows known bugs or issues and limitations with the product too, which is available. And we're working through those. We want to make sure that you're aware of them and can see that this is how we're going through and when they get resolved, so you can start using those features as you intend to. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ann. Just few last things about UC Xpress. We do have some courses available to you in Strive. So first of all, being our product overview course. So if you have missed all of the webinars, all the additional things we've launched about UC Xpress, and you want that quick overview of what it's all about, there is a UC Xpress product overview available in Strive, and I do highly recommend going through that. It's quite a short course, but it gives you all the basic information that you require. And then there's also a how to sell course. So it's a bit more in depth around how to position it, how it sits a bit differently to some of the other how it sits differently to our Broadworks product set, and how it sits, how to pitch it to your customers as well. All right, so jumping into a bit of solution selling. So one of the things we have been asked about is where it sits, the 3 different tiers of UC Xpress and selling differently to Broadworks. So first of all, a little bit about retail. So retail is a branch that we haven't really done well in with the Broadworks side. Per user per month does not make sense when you have something like this customer here, 50 locations. They don't need time of day routing. If it rings out after hours, people usually kind of expect that from that perspective. It's only single handsets at a lot of stores, so there's not a lot of there, but they may need voicemail, they may need things like that. So something like our UC Xpress Lite product set makes a lot of sense. Each site still needs each site needs a DID, of course. Every site having its own phone though, and they don't need a lot of calls at any one time. Out of 50 sites, maybe 20 of them is on a call at one time. That's probably a stretch for most retail locations. And then within that, 24 simultaneous calls is giving them some bit of expansion to call between stores and things like that as well when they need to. So something like this, if we look at our UC Xpress Lite product set, 24 simultaneous calls, 20 SIP channels, and all those DIDs, you're looking at less than $500 a month. It also means that as they scale, they bring on more stores, they open up more retail locations, that price isn't going to change too much. They're probably not going to make a lot more calls from that perspective, between both inbound and between stores. So it's a pretty good, compelling use case for that Lite UC Xpress product here. Jump across to the next one, John. Next one we're looking at is something a bit bigger, something like a coffee chain. If you're down here in Melbourne, there's quite a few of them, but they have lots of locations around the city. I guess I did need coffee when I was working on these the other day. So 7 locations, 5 coffee shops, a couple of handsets at each location, 2 offices, and something like our Essentials product is pretty good for this. So DIDs across the board, IVRs, so if you call in, allowing someone to select which store they want to speak to, get their local stores. Time of day routing, so outside business hours, it's routing to voicemail for the correct sites and things like that as well. 5 active channels, so they're not 5 external channels, so they're not receiving a lot of calls. They're not receiving a lot of calls. Most people aren't going to call into a coffee shop. And then 8 active lines. So once again, giving them the ability to call between sites as well. So with our Essentials product, we're looking at about $165 on a pay-as-you-go price for that perspective. Really compelling. Once again, gives them the ability to expand, open up new locations, things like that, and put additional handsets in those stores when they need it, things like that. So it's really compelling to be able to put that in place rather than our Broadworks, where putting in multiple users per site to give that functionality, everything along those lines. So something like our Essentials product sits really well with that kind of solution as well. Jumping into our next one as well. So a bit more of a call center kind of functionality for this next one. If you can jump to the next slide, John.
Is that not showing up?
I'm still seeing the coffee chain on my one.
Oh, hang on. It's smooth. I've changed it.
Ah, there we go. So that's jumped up for me now. So small call center kind of solution. So 15 call center staff, 5 admin, a supervisor to be able to see everyone, what's going on from that perspective. Currently, they're on an on-prem solution. So 30 SIP channels going into their on-prem solution today have a 100 number range. So something like this, something like our professional tier, where you can have, once again, they already know they have 30 SIP channels. So bring that across. 32 simultaneous calls, giving them a bit of extra calls internally, but they know what they're going to get from that perspective. Giving the professionals so they get that supervisor to be able to get that analytics, that reporting, things like that in there as well. 100 number range, you're looking at about $933 from that one. So moving them from that on-prem to this, to that first jump to the cloud could work really well. Also means that if they need to hire more staff for the call center, they're getting a bit busier, means you can expand the channels and bring on more staff when you need to as well. Where this also sits and struggles, and it's going to compare a lot to, would be our next slide. If you want to jump to that, John, is building a Broadworks solution for the call center as well. So if we take that same customer requirements, the one thing I have added on there is reporting and bringing that analytics back into an on-prem, into their existing reporting solution. So if they are doing that on-prem reporting, they may have it integrated into something like Power BI. So being able to use that for a single pane of glass to do all of their reporting. So our Broadworks with tolling being added into that can work out really well from this perspective. It's going to be a little bit more limited because if they do hire more staff, they expand because they're receiving a lot more calls. Calling perspective, they're not going to hit that limitation of that 30 channels. So they're going to get a lot more event functionality from that perspective. However, every time they do bring on a new staff member because they're receiving more calls, it's going to increase the price. But for what they have today, to give them that same level of functionality, ultimate to give them that same reporting suite, bringing that reporting back into Power BI, as I mentioned, the supervisor console out of iCall suite, looking at $872. So it's a little bit cheaper than what it is on UC Xpress, which is good. However, if they do expand or scale in any way, it's going to be will jump up in price a little bit as well. So that's something to be aware of with that solution from that perspective as well. I want to jump to the next slide. Awesome. I thought that was it. And we'll talk about our UC Xpress launch events, what we've got coming up next week.
Yeah, so we're really excited to launch UC Xpress. As Ann said before, we're really keen because we've got, we've spent a lot of time getting it ready, getting it prepared to launch it at the start of July. And we're hosting 2 events down here in Melbourne, one for techs and one for other staff. So the special tech-only event will be at Ballers Clubhouse in Melbourne on the 27th of July between 3 and 5 p.m. So if you scan that QR code, that will bring up a registration page allowing you to register for that event. We also have the official launch party, which is the big launch party for the program with Tim, our MD, and Pete and a few other people who will present at that and talk around UC Xpress, but also just to have a launch party because UC Xpress is a great product and we think it is a game changer within the industry and that, you should sell it to all your clients because we believe it's that good. So that QR code down at the bottom right-hand side there will also take you to a registration page to register for that event. So I'll sit on that for a minute or so, but next up is questions. So Mitch, I guess it's probably worthwhile looking at the Q&A.
Yeah, I'll run through some of the questions that we have had come through. If you do have any more, throw them in the chat now. Now's your chance. So porting process around the lines of the user verification. Yes, you are still putting in your port the same way. So still looking into SaaSPOS, uploading all the details, that same form, everything like that. That's not changing. If you need to call up and speak to our porting team, so if you need to change when a port's occurring or add some numbers, can you even speak to them and find out how to do that, anything like that, that is when you need to actually verify. So if you can log into SaaSPOS and throw the comments in there, log that from that perspective, that's no problem. It's when you actually call up and speak to our staff is when you need to do that verification from that perspective. The other one we got is the known bugs register for UC Xpress. So that is available on the Partner Resource Center under, I've gone blank
under
on the
UC
name.
Xpress, it's under knowledge base and under UC
Correct,
Xpress.
yes.
And within there is actually a whole list of items, and there'll be roadmap and bugs.
Correct, and it's a link to a third-party page. So it's just a link from the PRC into a different portal, and in there is being updated by our product team all the time. So that's going to be kept up to date from that perspective.
Yeah, it directly links into our product management portal. So that's live updates as the product managers are prioritizing them and getting them signed off.
And also it only has the top 10 listed on the page. There is a list well below that list that is actually on our internal system. So we're only showing the top 10 in priority.
It is also just topics or like headlines. If you do need to know more details, or if you're having some sort of issue, you want to verify that it is part of the same part of that problem, just call up, speak to our TAC team, verify, of course, or lodge a case, and they will confirm that with you as well. Awesome. That's all the questions we've had come through.
Live update. We're 79 partners now on UC Xpress. One just came through.
Great. Oh, that is good. Unless anyone else has any more questions to shoot through in the next 30 seconds, we'll call that done in a second. So we'll just wait for a few seconds and see if anyone wants to ask any more questions. All right. Well, I guess that's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we'll see you next month.